I'm Shawn Coleman of Touchpoints, Cuddles and Community, and obviously today I have a friend with me. It's Sara Shalom. Sara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about what I call the 3 Ins, which are integrity, intention, and inspiration. Just meaning integrity is coming to terms with exactly who you were uniquely designed to be. Intention means living according to that realization. And through inspiration, just by doing you give permission and inspiration to people around you to do the same.
Love that.
Thank you.
Love that. Like, it's just like a beautiful reminder that we get to, like, you know, be the change we want to see in the world, which is like kind of cheesy, but also like it's real. Yeah, it's so real. And so we get to choose to live it with intention, not only for ourselves but also for those around us. Beautiful way of thinking about community. So, speaking about community, I love building community in many ways, including through my Cuddle Up events,
which are awesome, and you should come.
Yes. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Sara's experience with Cuddle Up events and like the effects that it may have had in your life. So I would love to know like what attracted you to the event initially.
Wow. Okay. So I had tried working for a while myself as a professional cuddler, and it was not working for me. I think I don't have the same personality you do, and maybe it was attracting some different people. Maybe it was because I was doing it through a company and not on my own, but I was really inspired by what I saw online about what you were doing, and it seemed like a safe, structured environment in which to connect with other people and also learn some things that I really needed to learn, which is part of what we're talking about today. I was nervous, but I was curious about your events talked about having time before anybody ever thought about touching anyone else, where you walked us through exercises and about consent and about saying yes and no and just kind of getting to know you things, and those sometimes are uncomfortable for me because although I can come off like an extroverted person, I'm actually very private, and it can be hard for me to open up in certain ways, and I like to put myself in challenging circumstances to see how I can learn and grow.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And like, you bring up a very good point. For a lot of people who are kind of introverted or who are very like private and selective about like what they share and when and how, it can be very challenging to come to an event like this where people are opening up and getting really intimate. Not sexual, but intimate, So thank you for sharing that and being upfront about that, for sure.
Well, and we had talked before too about a couple of different people with certain experiences, people who may have had trauma in the past with our physical as well as other kinds of boundaries not being respected, to be able to be in an environment where those things are so clearly communicated by ourselves as well as others, and to be able to practice that without judgment is a huge growth opportunity, but can also be scary. And something that I noticed that surprised me at first, but then made perfect sense later, was that people are attracted to these events sometimes who are somewhere on the autism spectrum, which is amazing because sometimes people on the spectrum, a couple of whom are in my own household, interact differently and have different social cues and have very particular ways they do and don't want to give and take comfortably physically, or maybe as far as eye contact or whatever. And I noticed the freedom that those on the spectrum were experiencing here, being able to say things like, when you share with me, I'm not going to look you in the eye because that's actually distracting for me. So when I look away, that means I'm paying more attention. And so for me to hear that and be able to respect that and communicate clearly was a really cool and safe experience too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do feel that, like, that's very true, and that like you mentioned, like a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum have had a lot of practice with communicating what they need and getting clear around that, because their needs are often different than a lot of people around them in certain ways, in terms of like communication and connection. And so like being in an environment where like we're not being judged for the needs that we have, or judged for the requests that we're making around communication and connection, is really beautiful. It can be really liberating. I know that I felt very seen and very comfortable in that environment. And for me, as a trauma survivor or a sexual assault survivor, like I definitely I'm grateful, as you mentioned, to be in an environment where I can ask for exactly what I want, where I know no one's going to come up from behind me and just start hugging on me or cuddling on me, right? Like I was talking to a friend recently about like going to like clubs and bars when I was younger, and just like having the experience of just like suddenly there's some guy grounding on me who I've never met, who I don't know, you know. And I think a lot of people hear about cuddle events, they hear about cuddle parties, they even hear about cuddle sessions and think that that's what it's going to be. You know, it's going to be some random person that they've never met, a stranger, just coming up behind them and all of a sudden cuddling them and snuggling them, or expecting things from them that they don't want to give. And the reality of it is that that happens at clubs and bars everywhere. That happens, you know, in everyday interactions. And, you know, if it's held by a skilled facilitator, then that's not happening at these cuddle events.
Right. I also really have appreciated in events that I've come to here, as well as at the Love Warriors place. He's a friend of ours as well.
Evanston.
That there have been opportunities for group activities that involve contact where there is absolute, not at all passive aggressive permission to sit it out and just watch. And sometimes I do that. And also I was really surprised the first time I came here, how even the cuddling part, there are people who choose to never cuddle during the hours that we're here, and to never, but they might just sit and have a conversation, or just participate in the exercises in the beginning, and then just sit and look out the window. And I have loved the diversity of opportunity to go from choice to choice to choice, and go, this is working for me now, and 5 minutes later it's not working for me. And now I've taken a break, maybe it will work for me again.
Totally.
You know, into kind of a buffet of experiences, practicing being in tune with exactly how I feel in a moment, and communicating that to others in a safe and controlled environment. Because I think, at least in my life, when I feel, I have a number of children, for example, so I've had that feeling at different points in my life where like people want something from me, and where I'm just running from satisfying one person's need to another person's need, that I never stop and go, what do I need? Or how is this affecting me? So to be able to have, you know, breaks and different kinds of activities and different kinds of options where I can keep pausing and getting in tune with myself is a really wonderful practice that I can take further into my life.
Brilliantly said. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important. And like, I know for me, one of the absolute most rewarding sessions that I've ever had as a professional cuddler was with a client who was a new mother. And she had the experience very much of like feeling like her body wasn't her own in a lot of ways, you know, like going through pregnancy and like very much loving the connection with her child, but at the same time like having to be mindful of so many things regarding her body in order to make sure that her child was like getting exactly what it needs, and that, you know, her baby was safe. And then once the baby's born, you know, breastfeeding and like, you know, taking care of the baby in that way, and just feeling kind of disconnected from her body, just like as, you know, as a woman, as a person, and more of just being, you know, just like there as a caretaker, you know, and for the use of this baby as this baby needs to use it, which is just can feel a bit alienating at times, you know.
So, I'm so glad you brought that up. I know this isn't where we were going to go, but it's so interesting how pregnancy can go both ways. It can do what you were saying, kind of detach us from ourselves, and on the other hand, give us an opportunity to stand up in ways we haven't before. I remember being pregnant and random strangers thinking it was okay to put their hands on my belly, and then worse, on my baby. Or even in a hospital, someone just walking in and taking the baby without asking me or something. And I needed to go through a process, which actually involved some counseling, but where I realized I suddenly had this mother bear self where I was willing to stand up for my children in a way that I was not yet willing to stand up for myself.
Whoa.
And I had to have someone show me in a really blatant way and ask me, why will you not tolerate certain things being said or done to your children, but you're not taking care of your inner child? You know, and that was a real disconnect for me that I needed to be walked through. So it's really great. This is one of those contexts that people might not think of immediately, like you might think of what's the word, counseling or something like that, but where we can practice things in a more less clinical way. And also I love that so many of your exercises are less like something like group therapy and more like games.
Beautiful. Yeah, we do get a number of different exercises where we get to just practice or just play with these different ideas, and it can feel very very freeing, very liberating to just try out some different things, to experience it for sure. Yeah, and I would love to know, like, having those experiences of like doing things like the yes no exercise and like being able to just make some requests and just like say no and hear some requests, you know, so hear some requests and say no and make some requests and hear that no, you know, and the same thing with yes. How that impacted your life, that had any big caused any big shifts in terms of how you communicate and how you relate to others.
Huge both ways. So hearing no and saying no were things I was really uncomfortable with, and the first time I was here, you had us do an exercise where we partnered up with someone and we would just ask them random things like, could I poke your elbow, or you know, whatever. And the other person had to say no. And I knew it was a game and I knew it was just silly, but I can't tell you how uncomfortable it was for me, not only to say no, even though it was expected of me, but also to hear no, even though I knew it was coming. There was almost like I asked a bad thing or something. And then I think there was a moment too where we could switch between saying yes and no and having to decide in the moment and then allow the elbow poke or whatever it is to happen. That was really uncomfortable for me. And something that you taught me that has made a radical difference for me moving forward is a response that just shifted my thinking. And it's when someone says no to me about something, to respond genuinely by saying, thank you for taking care of yourself. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Thank you for, and that was a shift for me because first of all, it taught me that when I say no, that is self-care.
Yes.
Right. And secondly, that when someone else says no, it's probably not about me or about what I was offering at all, but about them doing what they need to do.
Totally.
And when I could put it in that context instead of thinking of it as rejection or naughtiness or something like that was a huge relief for me. We were joking though. I said the only time that has failed on me was recently. I asked someone something on a text and they said no, and I responded with thank you for taking care of yourself, because that has become my process. I was going to say progress. And they were like, what? And they thought I was being passive aggressive. And then I said, thank you for asking if I was being passive aggressive, so that I could clarify, no, I really genuinely mean that. So unless people know you well and have heard you say that, I don't suggest you text it.
Yeah, totally. Which is like, it says so much about like our society and how we're conditioned, you know, because it's just like we don't normally honor people who are taking care of themselves, for getting the things that they need. It's much more common for us to instead critique people, you know, for not stepping up, for not being generous, for being selfish, for holding back, you know. And so, yeah, it's important that we have places where we are encouraged to essentially be selfish, and maybe even radically selfish, so that we can find like a normalized way of caring for ourselves on a day-to-day basis that ignores what's expected and instead prioritizes what we need and what's truly important, you know?
I really like the term self-care instead of selfish, because often ways that we're taught to give and give and give and give, you know, that it depletes us in a way that we don't really even have anything to give. You know, and I love how, you know, bridging this with what you said in the beginning about being the change, you know, I really believe that we can't force anyone else to do anything, but we can certainly not only set boundaries, but it's one of those 3 N's for me, the inspiration. We can make consistent choices, you know, with a sense of humor and grace in a way that can inspire others to consider maybe following suit and doing what's right for them. And and in that way, I am caring for others by caring for myself, because I'm giving them an example. You know, so many of us have grown up without real life examples of how to do things in a healthy way. You know, we see a lot of dysfunction and we think I have all kinds of ideas of how not to do something, but I really don't know what it looks like, except in a textbook or something. I don't know what it looks like hands-on, moment to moment, to do things gracefully. You know, so to give a graceful example to others with our self-care is really, in my opinion, a radical service.
Totally. Yeah. Totally agree. Thank you. Yeah, it gives us an opportunity to really expand what's possible for others, you know, like not that they couldn't always do it, but it's just like if we don't see these examples, we don't realize sometimes there are possibilities for us. So I love that. Thank you, Sara. You're amazing. Can I give you a hug?
You may. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for like coming on and talking. Can I give you a hug?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for taking care of yourself. Oh, you mentioned that you had like you showed me like today like a couple other little fun phrases that people can say instead of thank you for taking care of yourself.
These are not mine. I found them on the internet. They just happened to come up in my Pinterest feed, and I thought they were great.
They are great.
It says, some words to honor someone's boundaries. I know that wasn't easy for you. Thank you for trusting me with your boundary. Thank you for showing me where your limits are. This was the big one for me. It's hard to hear a no about this, but I so respect you and your boundary. Yeah, I think that's taking care of yourself too, by saying that hurts a little, but I respect you.
Yes, I think that's one we could probably even text. And people would get it.
Yeah. So the other 2 were thank you for taking care of yourself. It helps me understand you better. And thank you for teaching me the importance of boundaries. Yeah. Well, and you know, I think we can take that back to sometimes when people say no, they're always going to mean no, you know, and they're like, this is never going to happen. And sometimes too, just like we get to practice at your events, you know, we can answer. I remember you having us practice something like not right now, or maybe later, or no for now. You know, and we always have the option. No, was that wrong?
I just say you
have the option to change your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's how I interpret it in my head. So that was me, not her. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me.
No worries.
But that we do have, you know, we don't need to. I'm not suggesting we badger people to change their minds. If they said no, it's no. But that myself, if I've said no and then I maybe feel comfortable later, I can change my mind, and the other way. Just because I said yes at one moment about something doesn't mean you can just do it the next moment. So like you talked about people just walking up and grabbing you. Yeah. Just because I said yes, you can hug me now doesn't mean it's okay to just grab me when I'm walking past.
Well said.
Right.
Yeah, just like giving consent now doesn't mean you have consent later,
Right.
you know, for everything else. So totally, and like unless you've established like blanket consent rules and
Right.
like talked about that.
Right.
But yeah, I'm like a stickler for like tiny little subtle differences. So that's why I was like, wait, no,
Yeah, I don't want to misquote you.
Thank you. So the idea behind that is just that there are times that we are a maybe, times we're uncertain, times we're like, I think I might be into that, I'm not sure.
Right.
And the encouragement or the invitation at Cuddle Up Events, and it's the same way at Cuddle Parties as well, is to say no. If you're a maybe, say no. Just make it clear, make it firm. You don't have to explain it, you don't have to justify it, just say no. And you always have the right to change your mind. So if you do decide that like later that you're like, yeah, you know what, I might be into that, you can go circle back and find that person or invite them to do that thing, or perhaps find someone else who's like into that activity as well.
Right.
So I think I think we can wrap up there.
Awesome.
But yeah, thank you again. And you want to give people something to consider.
Yeah, so something I always do in my videos is I give permission and I ask a question. So I would like to give you permission, first of all, just to honor your own no, and to honor other people's no's around you without assuming that it's about you or rejection. And I give you permission to just consider what might it feel like if you did that? How might your relationship to yourself change? How might your relationship to others in your loving community change, or in your workplace change? And just think about what that might be like, and then if you want to, you have permission to give it a try. And I always ask a question, so to put in the comments here, or I know you have, I always say on my Facebook community page, which we'll link to below, but on Shawn's community page, what's a time in your life when honoring your no, even though maybe it was uncomfortable to do, really proved to be radical self-care for you, and that you're really proud of having done that, and maybe it moved you forward in some way in your life, in courage or growth or experience. Let us know about your positive experience with honoring your own no.
Yes, I love those. That's beautiful. That's inspiring. As are you. Thank you. All right.
You have made such a difference in my life, and I'm so thankful for you. Really, really.
Thank you.
Really.
All right. Well, end on that note, friends. Have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Love you bunches.